students are being empowered. I just heard it today when teachers were asking Sona, what are you doing here so early? And Sona's like, I'm giving a professional development. And so it really empowers them that they can create change, that they can contribute, that they can be a leader. I know I hear a lot of people say that students or youth are leaders in the future. And yes, that is true, but that's not all the way true. That's not all the way true. There are leaders now. And a lot of the times when teachers are provided with professional development, it's so they can be the best educators that they can be, which positively impacts students. So why don't we have students along the side of us doing this work as well? Because it's going to positively impact them in the end. So without further ado, I would like the students to introduce themselves.
I'm Camilo John. I'm in 7th grade. And you can call me Bubbles.
My name is Sona Fati. I'm in 8th grade. You can call me Sona because that's my name.
And so, unfortunately, we did have and I should say this, every tip of the month session, we will have about 3 to 4 students presenting. A lot of the students in the class also contributed to this presentation. Dion Williams was one of our presenters, and he was not able to be here today because he was suspended, which really breaks our heart. Mr. Bubbles is going to fill in for his part of the presentation.
Okay, so today's agenda is that we're going to be talking to you about implicit bias. We're going to tell you our stories of implicit bias, and we're going to tell you our implicit biases and why people have them. We're going to give you the opportunity to share with a partner your own implicit biases. I'm going to be talking to you about the negative impact and harsh realities of implicit bias, and we're going to also give you the solutions to implicit bias. And Mr. Reese is going to be talking to you about automatic associations. And yeah.
What is implicit bias? Implicit bias is having a certain version of a certain type of people. This may cause attitudes towards a person you may have assumptions or stereotypes about. Basically, like what it's trying to say is like the stereotypes you have about a group of people before you even meet them, like, oh, all black people eat fried chicken and watermelon and white people can't dance. This is just examples, but implicit bias, it's just basically stereotypes. And my story was when I was in 4th grade. I had a teacher, and I didn't think she was racist, but I thought she was like really ignorant because of the way she treated black and brown students compared to the way she treated like the white students in the class. And like a few examples are like she would sit the black kids at the back of the class. She would give the black kids a smaller library. She would like grade the black kids differently, even if like the kids got the same answers, etc.
Okay, so my story was in 7th grade, and basically, I had a teacher, right? So, I get really tight braids, because my mom did my hair really tight. So, I get a lot of headaches, so I put my head down on my table, and basically, my teacher assumed that I was on my phone, and my teacher said, you probably have your phone now just like all the other kids, and by all the other kids, I think he meant all the other black kids, but yeah.
Our implicit bias and why people have them. My personal implicit bias is about like white males on the police force, because like you always see in the news like a white cop killed a black kid because the black kid was reaching for something that wasn't actually a weapon, and that like really like it makes me like annoyed, because like the white people can just say like put your hands up and what are you trying to reach for, but they just automatically just shoot him all the time. It's just like it really like affects me, because now I get like frustrated and scared whenever I see a white cop, because I don't know,
my implicit bias is gonna be really weird, but my implicit bias is against some white male teachers, because in 3rd and 6th grade, my white male teacher, they basically always made me feel like I was dumb and I couldn't do nothing. Some people have implicit biases because of their past experiences and the way they were treated by other people.
Yeah, like sometimes like they'll see in the news 3 black kids robbed a store, then you'll automatically think in your brain, oh, black kids, like they're you know, they're gonna rob something, and it's without even knowing that you're like thinking it. You're just automatically. Yeah, like for example, like if you see a Latina girl at a bus stop, do you like actually see? Like do you actually see the next professor for neurology, and like if you see a black kid walking down the hallway or walking down the street, do you actually see the next like cancer research helper?
And so I think it's just important for us to highlight that we all have implicit bias, and we're going to talk a little bit at the end about what is harmful. I think your first initial association with different things is not harmful, but we'll talk a little bit about that later.
Okay, so we'll give you guys the opportunity to talk.
Man, especially a black young man, my first reaction is to be a tall one. You play basketball, and you know a lot of them don't play basketball. And I even know just being tall that people approach me and say basketball. So for me to look at a young black male and assume that, hey, you play basketball, is not fair. And so that's something that I've been made aware of, and trying to reach out with some other way of making a first connection.
And then we'll just take one more. Yes.
Yeah, I think, Sona, this might have happened with you and me. I'm not sure if it was you, it might have been a different student, but like a huge implicit bias that I have is like when I see kids of color like playing in the hallway, like I call it fighting, and like I jump in a really gross way, right? I think you took Elizabeth's phone, and I came down on you really hard, and I've been thinking about that since that happened. And like you took a sixth grader's phone, and you're tall, and you were like holding it above her head, and I walked up and said, like, do I need to report stolen property? And that's just like taking it way over the top. And that's about like growing up in the United States and like images of criminals that were shown in the United States are kids of color. So that's something that I've been thinking about a lot that happened between us, and that's like a huge thing, is like when kids are roughhousing in the hallway, like how are we approaching it? Because we do want people to be physically safe, but I don't need to come at it like that. And something that I've been trying to do now is like showing up and just being like really goofy and dorky, and that like diffuses everything, because kids are like, Mr. Z is like being dumb and this isn't fun anymore, as opposed to Mr. Z is like punishing us and making this bigger than it needs to be.
So thank you so much, Mr. Z, for sharing that. I also experienced that with Miss Sona and another student in class, but I don't come at it from that perspective. So thank you so much for highlighting that. I do tell them how they should demand respect from each other and how they should be respectful to one another, and hitting each other is not okay. I don't know how they play outside of school, but I would rather they not treat each other like that in the classroom. So thank you for highlighting that. I really appreciate that. And thank you for all highlighting and sharing your own implicit bias and the implicit biases that you have experienced.
So, now I'm going to talk to you about the negative impacts and harsh realities of implicit bias. So, teachers may have low academic standards for students of color. So, this happened to me when I was in 6th grade, and basically, so all year around, I basically just went to my classes, slept, sat around, didn't do nothing, and I basically just got D's and E's all year long. Students of color also may experience disproportionate suspensions and expulsions.
This happened with my friend Dion. He's not here though. But like he'll get in like fights and but he'll get suspended for it, and then like he'll have to face time out of classes and like not be getting the education he needs. Where's classes?
Students of color also may not be put into gifted or talented programs. So this happened to me last year, right? So I went to go talk to a teacher, and I asked that teacher why I couldn't be put into a gifted or talented program, because I felt like that I was smart. And the teacher told me that it's not about feeling like you're smart, it's about actually being smart. Grades may be also influenced by a teacher's bias towards students of color.
This happened to me when I was in 5th grade. I was like sitting in rows, and my white friend was right next to me, and I noticed him like looking over his shoulder, like looking at my answers, and like for this test. And it didn't really matter that much to me because he was my friend, you know. It's like what friends do, but like, and like later in the week we got our test scores back, and like I saw that we compared answers because fifth graders, and like I noticed that he got a higher score than me, and this could have been for one of two reasons. One, because he was white, and like he just got higher grades because of that, or the teacher might have thought that I was copying him, just based on so overcoming implicit bias in education, or basically solutions. Be aware of your biases so you can fix them. So like for example, like how you guys all shared out, know that that's what your implicit bias is and try to fix them. Study and teach peers, colleagues about implicit bias. So like if you think that any teachers or any like friends of yours have a strong implicit bias, try to like teach them lessen it. Pay attention to the people or teachers who try to close the achievement gap. So like the gap between whites and blacks in education is pretty big, and you want to pay attention to the people or teachers that try to close the gap. Tune into implicit bias in your school. So like try to notice all the implicit biases that are happening in your school and like try to fix it. And then stop buying into the single story. And the single story, pretty sure we learned a little bit about this in history, but it's like a single story is one single like idea of a whole group of people just based on the things that you've seen before.
So now I want to talk a little bit about automatic association. So automatic, we talked about understand that, but really getting to know them better, talk with them more. I know I have a student in my first period class that she has a lot of anger, and she goes through a lot of different things, but I just check in with her and I'm real, and I'm just like, what's going on? I see our interactions are not the same. Seems like you're going through a lot. How can I support you? What's going on? So just making sure that we're really tying into those students that have problematic behaviors. Taking the IAT test what is a really good suggestion. And then the blind spot hidden biases of good people. I think that's a really, really good read when it talks about implicit bias. And then listening to your students, paying attention, and giving them platforms to tell their story. So even in your classrooms, giving students platforms to really tell their story about their education experiences, about how they're feeling, about their life experiences, and then feedback. Receiving feedback. I know Kent District is doing a lot of this with their teachers. Is the students have the opportunity to actually give the teachers feedback about how they feel in their class, about their education experience in their class. So like Sona talked about a teacher who made her feel dumb. Now, I strongly believe that teacher did not intend to make Sona feel dumb. I strongly believe that. However, intentions versus impact. That's how Sona felt. So if the teacher was to receive feedback and Sona said, in my class, I feel dumb, then that teacher could have had that conversation with Sona and said, Sona, I think you're very bright, but you're not applying yourself. And so just receiving feedback and giving students a platform like this to tell their story